If you're a composer, producer, or musician, then you need to start doing this. Turn off your computer.
You're not my dad!
In all seriousness though guys, the more I get away from my computer, the better my music gets. Hey, I'm Louis Taylor, I'm a composer based in Bristol, and I used to basically only use my computer to write music at some points, but that is just so limiting. These days I like to balance composing with hardware, instruments, software as well, but also importantly for me, handwritten sheet music. But don't worry guys, if you can't read sheet music, stick around to the end because I've got you covered too. Before we get into the video though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit subscribe, it really helps the channel out. Okay, my first point. Computers are bad.
What?
Sometimes.
Nice.
Okay, so all jokes aside, computers are amazing and they've revolutionised the composition process. They provide us with endless possibilities and make compositional processes easier in many ways. However, as composers we mustn't forget, these computers are just tools and they're not the only tools that we've got at our disposal. Using hardware gear such as synthesizers, drum machines or other instruments can inspire us too and bring a new dimension to writing music. When we're physically touching an instrument and playing it with our hands or even our mouths, we are connecting with it in a sort of vibrational sense, can really provide this emotion and inspiration, which I think allows us to create new melodies, harmonies, ideas that we wouldn't have been able to do without that connection. But aside from all the hippie stuff, using pen and paper can be a really great way to explore new ideas and to think about music in a fresh way. When you're composing on a computer, it's easy to get stuck into a certain workflow and to write music that kind of always sounds the same. That's not always the case, but I think that it's good to experiment with new workflows. Using sheet music forces us to think of music in a much more structured and formalized way, something a little bit less intuitive. Sometimes using purely your intuition is a great thing, and sometimes using purely theory is a great thing. You can use them together. Separating them and using them together, there's a beauty to that. We have to suddenly consider, on a theoretical level, melody, harmonies, the notes we're using, rhythms, even the structure of the music, and how they all relate to each other. Not to mention as well that using sheet music can really help with collaborating with other musicians. Even if you don't or they don't read sheet music, create new forms of music written down through graphic scores, which can help translate your ideas to those performers. In any case, it's always important to stand on the shoulders of giants. The musical greats of the past, such as Beethoven, Bach, Mozart and countless others, all used their minds, instruments and paper to get their ideas across. They didn't have access to this sophisticated technology, yet they were still able to create timeless masterpieces. These composers certainly relied on their musical intuition and their background, but also their training to create their music. They could write down ideas on their paper and use their instruments to explore different possibilities and refine their ideas. This allowed them to develop a deep understanding of music theory and composition, which helped them develop groundbreaking works and also a very clear sense of style within themselves. Seeing it on a written dimension can really help them figure out exactly what makes their style up, and that can be helpful not only to write in a similar style if you're not already doing that intuitively, but also to help change that and mold away from it to create a more grand timeline of the style. A great example of this is Beethoven with his early, middle and late styles. Pretty clear that he knew what his style was and he was purposefully trying to break away from it, and that in itself became his style. Not only classical composers but modern artists too, such as the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix and even somebody like Deadmau5, all use and see the value in getting away from the computer and using hardware, even writing stuff down, to express their music on a different level, in a more tactile and intuitive way. It's interesting because getting away from the computer can be both intuitive and logical at both different times and at the same time. But even if you don't read sheet music, you can still write music down. You can write down chords, lyrics, and instrumentation without classic sheet music techniques. For example, if you're a guitarist, you can use guitar tab, which is a method of using the different strings on the guitar and laid out in a vertical way with the frets on a horizontal way, so that you can see where to put your fingers to play certain notes and chords. This can be written as just a block on a piece of paper, which comes up as one chord, or you can do it in a linear way, a little bit like sheet music. And it's widely used in many different types of music because it's so simple and intuitive to understand. If you're a singer-songwriter, you can just use a notebook to write down these lyrics that you're coming up with and the chords that go with them, and even little melody ideas. If you're a producer, composer, or beat maker, anything like that, you can use graphic scores to map out the structure. You can use graphs to level the intensity over time. You can even write down piano roll as you would see in your DAW. Exactly how the beat's going to come out or how the chord progression is going to look, you don't need to be able to read music to be able to write stuff down in a way that makes sense to you. So even if you don't read sheet music, there are many different ways to write down your musical ideas. So don't be afraid to experiment with all these different techniques and find out what works best for you. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much for listening to my ramble today, guys. I really appreciate it. Hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like and ding that bell so you can stay tuned for upcoming content. Thanks a lot and see you next time. Bye for now.